So about 3 years ago, our family moved out to a 1-acre parcel of land with an old farmhouse, and we wanted to have a garden, maybe get some chickens, dabble with some honeybees, and just kind of enjoy the outdoors and get out of the stress of everyday life in the city, and just enjoy the country life. And so we had been planning for a while what we were going to do with chickens. There was a lot of other projects we had to do first, but about a year ago we started to get ready to do that. And so I built a coop, which I posted a video on. I've finalized the chicken run and a little food shelter that with some recycled materials from the previous owners. And my wife just did a video after I got my work done. She went in and cutified it. She put some nice flowers out there and some planter boxes I made, hung some signs and some decorations, and made it so it's not so utilitarian, and it's nice and it blends into our house. We chose to not put our coop far away. Our parcel of land is split by a country road, and so we kept it on our side of the road, so it's right behind our house. And we did that because we can come right out of the kitchen, we can get eggs, we can take food scraps out, and it's just closer, and so it's easier for us, and it'll be safer for our family, so we don't have to go back and forth across the road. And so that's all in place. We also did a nice video when we went and got our 4 hens. We got 2 golden buff Orpingtons and 2 barred rocks from Meyer Hatchery during their homestead fest. So basically everything's in place. We've already started to get some eggs, which is really awesome. One of our Orpington hens has done, 4 eggs in 5 days. So we're pretty excited about that. But now we're to the point where we're done outlaying expenses for the most part. And I'm kind of looking at how things added up. And I'm like, wow, we need to figure out how we can keep our ongoing costs down. Even though we used a lot of free items, a lot of recycled things that we found, everything still adds up. The fencing, T-posts, T-post clips, the materials for the coop, feeders, it just adds up. And so now we're to the point I want to keep our costs low, because right now the basic ongoing cost is primarily just the feed. And so I did a lot of looking online, and I'm thinking, what can we do? What are some ideas that would work for our family to keep our feed costs down? So I have settled, at least here in the beginning, of doing a couple of things. Number one is I really loved the idea of putting your compost piles inside of the chicken pen area. And so what I'm going to be doing is using wood chips. We use pine shavings for bedding, and so on a periodic basis that will be added to the pile for my carbon source. I've also got a big pile of fall leaves. Every fall since we've been here, we have 4 huge maple trees, and so I get a ton of leaves and I save all those in a pile. I run them over with a push mower to shred them up and chop them up, and then I put them in a big bin that I made. So that'll be good carbon. And then for the green, I'm gonna add grass clippings. I'm gonna use that same push mower and just do our backyard area. And every week when I do that, I'll get a couple of bagfuls of grass clippings. And of course, any weeds that we pull from the garden, just different things like that. Maybe wood chips we get and wood bark from when I do firewood. And so we're gonna add that to the pile. I'm gonna toss food scraps on it, and that's going to be a great source for the chickens to get the bugs that are attracted to it, to get the food scraps off the top of it, nibble at the seeds, maybe nibble at the weeds, the grass clippings, put their manure on it, and then they'll scratch it and turn that. And so then every week or so, I'll go from the main pile and I'll turn that over to another pile. So at the end, if you do that every week to 10 days, every 4, 5, 6 weeks, I'll have a couple, 3 wheelbarrows of good compost that we can use around our orchard, around our strawberries, our blueberries, and hopefully when we get a garden in maybe next year. So that's the biggest one that I'm going to do. Some people actually are able to feed their hens almost exclusively from doing that compost method. So I'm going to rely on that quite a bit. The second thing I'm going to try to do is put more forage down for them. I don't have it done yet because I don't want to outlay any more expense, but I'll show you, or in the other videos you've seen, my coop area is kind of like a big rectangular area, and then off of each end of it I have kind of like two wings where they are runs that are really paddocks that are fenced in, and so I can alternate the hens back and forth between the two. So maybe for like 10 days to 2 weeks they'll be in one end, which is like 4 foot by 60 foot, and the other end is 4 foot by 60 or 70 feet as well. And so while they're munching and lunching on the one run, the other one can have time to recover. And so we'll bounce back and forth and do that. So until I have that system in place, which will probably be next year when I actually get more chickens, I'm gonna do something where I'm gonna incorporate what they're called either grazing panels, if you look those up on YouTube, or in the cattle industry they would be called forage excluders. Either way, it's just a fancy term for you build some sort of a cage or a framework that prevents your animals, whatever it is, from eating and scratching in that forage area. And so I built some cages, which I think are the cheapest way to go, using some PVC and some vinyl coated fencing that I had. And I'm gonna put those out there, and I'm gonna do that today. And so when I do that, I'm gonna be using, I just bought this at our local garden store or farm supply store. It's a chick mix, but basically it's a blend of ryegrass, 2 different types of ryegrass, white clover, flax, alfalfa, and red clover blend. And I took that and I just put it, made like a big shaker jar. And so I'm just gonna rake an area up, scuff it up, sprinkle this like a big salt shaker, put the excluder frame over top of it, water it, and let that go. And then every couple of weeks I'll just move that frame, so they'll always have a fresh supply of forage. And I'll keep monitoring this over the next, I don't know, several months as we go. And I'm gonna keep track of the volume and the cost of my feed. And we're gonna see what I can maintain and how, what's the minimum I can get by with my feed mix for the hens. What's the lowest I can get that down to in volume, and so forth. So we'll go out there today and you can check it out. So this frame I made out of just some 1/2-inch PVC, and this was just happened to be some wire that I had from doing a gardening project a couple years ago. It's vinyl coated, it's more expensive. I didn't use it because of that. I just happened to have it. So if you have hardware cloth, any other type of fencing, you can just use whatever you have on hand. Make sure it's big enough or small enough to keep the rooster or the chickens' heads out of it. They could possibly get through this, but this is wide enough that even if they peck at it a little bit, it's still going to keep them out of, I think, most of the area. But we'll see, and I'll report back and we'll see what that looks like. So just scattered the seed, you scuff up this ground, put your seed down, water it in really good. I might come back later and sprinkle a little bit of some different topsoil on top of this to cover it, and then you let it go. These are 4 foot long, and I've got 3 of these that I'm gonna start doing on these runs, and then every 10 days I'm just gonna move them. Make sure when you do it, I just did it for simplicity's sake, that the width on here is 18 inches, or I'm sorry, yeah, 18 inches, because this rake is like 16 inches wide. So it's just very simple to come in and do this. I have a very narrow run here, as you can see. It's kind of on the periphery of our property along the fence line. So you might have bigger cages, but these are nice and strong. They're lightweight, they're inexpensive, and you can move them around, you can stack them. They're gonna be low maintenance. I don't have to paint this, worry about it rotting and replacing it. It's strong enough that if a chicken does get on top of it, it's not gonna crush it. And if I have to make them again, it really didn't take that much time. So we'll see how it goes. So that's one of the techniques that I'm gonna be using here to keep the runs nice, to keep the foraging greens in here, and they'll have more bugs that they can get at and more of the nice greens that they can eat to help keep our food costs down. Okay, so here we are in my chicken pen area. I'll call this the primary pen, because no matter which of the runs they're in, whether they're in this run back here where we just put that grazing frame in, or eventually if they come down this way, which I'll put that run in probably next year. No matter which run they have access to, they'll always be in this primary area here, just off the coop. So that's where I'm going to put my compost piles, and basically they're going to start here with the primary one, and then that'll get turned to this area, which will get turned, and it'll eventually work its way south, so that all I have to do is come down the run with the wheelbarrow and get the finished product on this end. And so the components, once again, are going to be this leaf mold. Here I just mowed the yard the other day. I'm going to start collecting it. I usually don't. We don't use any chemicals in our yard at all, whether it's a herbicide or fertilizer. And so I've got grass clippings here. And then the other thing that I'll always add onto the top of this periodically is, now that we have our hens, we're going to start reusing all of these kitchen scraps that normally would just be a waste product. And we try to eat as organic as possible, which is expensive. And so it makes me feel a lot better knowing that instead of these scraps going in the trash, that there's a better use for them and they can help feed the hens, which are going to give us eggs. So I'm going to go ahead and do this and build this pile. One thing to watch out for when you're dumping your grass clippings or your dried leaves or straw or wood chips for your carbon, watch out for foreign matter. We've got a lot of little kids that come over here and play and just life, but you'll find little things like shards of plastic, Nerf bullets, what have you. Most chickens, I mean, you can be careful, they'll pick through that and they'll toss it to the side, but just for the health and well-being of your chickens, pull out any foreign matter and put it in the waste can. So a couple of final points here about the compost pile. You can probably tell by the video, this is really not the right tool for it. This is more like a garden spade to turn soil. It's just what I had on hand. You want to get yourself like a manure fork or a compost fork, something with smaller tines, a broader width to it for turning it. Everything sticks to this, but that's what I had. And then the other thing is, so I layered this. I tried to do layers of greens and browns. You want to do roughly, I don't know, twice as much browns as greens, and then just kind of manage it. And the other big thing is you got to have the moisture on it, so you could grab it and squeeze it and get a little bit of water out of it. These leaves are really wet, and we've also had a lot of rain this season, so I'm just going to sprinkle it a little bit here from this watering can, but we're supposed to have rain in the next couple of days, so I'll just watch it. But if you live in a drier area, make sure you keep the pile wet. And then the final thing that's going to go on here is our kitchen scraps. So I'm going to always keep a bowl in the kitchen or a Ziploc bag in the refrigerator, and whenever you get scraps that are good for the hens to eat, I've got all kinds of vegetables, apple cores that the kids don't eat, strawberries from the garden that had spoiled, grapes, vegetable peelings. This is from cucumber, and we're going to just dump this on the top. That way the hens will peck through that. It'll encourage them to scratch and peck around and get some food off the top of that. So that about does it for this video. I'll keep you posted, like I said, and hopefully this will work out. And you know, this is my first time doing this, so I'm by no means an expert. I just thank everybody else out there online that's posted a lot of great videos. It's a great community to be a part of, and we all share the knowledge and help each other get better. So hopefully I gave you some ideas, and as I go along, I'll post how this turns out, and anything I can do to improve it, I'll report back. Thanks again.